There is a stat out there that shows there is a roadmap for this Baylor team to shock the college football world.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on YouTube. I appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day as we cap off the week with some beautiful chrome domes behind me here for those watching on YouTube. Boy, it's going to be fun to have those back. Anyway, today we are talking about this stat that shows Baylor can shock the world. Preseason rankings be damned. Plus, who are the new leaders on this team? We know one of them, but Dave Aranda has a surprise answer on some of the other guys who are taking charge of this 2025 Baylor team. And I have to do it. I have a controversial take, but I am the way that God made me, and I want to show it in front of you guys. The BU versus BU debate. The answers, my stance, might surprise you. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. We start where we start. I know you love it when I talk about those rankings, right? Preseason, coaches poll, AP poll. Oh, don't matter, Cam. Coaches poll doesn't matter. Oh, AP, who cares? Who cares about preseason rankings? I totally understand that. I get that. I don't lose sleep at night over the preseason polls. Do I think Baylor should have been ranked? Yes, I do. I thought they deserved to be ranked. And to be fair, I think there were a few more Big 12 teams that deserve to be in there. I think it's bizarre that a team like Utah is the odds-on favorite to win the conference in Vegas and they don't get a top 25 ranking. Like, personally, I actually don't think they should be in the top 25, but like, if we're going off what Vegas likes for them to win the conference, why are they not in the top 25? In fact, they had Kansas pretty high up on that list to win the conference. They were nowhere near it. They were in the way down on the, next receiving votes. And Baylor, again, I've kind of said my piece on it. I think what they bring back from last year, the offensive numbers, how they did in the portal. They had a better portal class than a lot of people think. They've had back-to-back really good recruiting classes, the first of which we're seeing on this team this year. We know that comes into account when talking about some other schools. But with Baylor, it doesn't matter. And I did want one last anecdote in here before I give you the stat. And that is that someone had taken a screenshot. I wish I had it. I should have had it on here about the two Big Ten teams, Indiana and Illinois, who are ranked right outside the top 10, and two SEC teams, Tennessee and Ole Miss, which are ranked later in the teens and into the 20s. And for Ole Miss and Tennessee, it was like they bring back 40% of their production. Here's how good they were in the SEC last year, this, and this, basing off of what they did last year to get in their rankings for the top 20 this year. For Illinois, the key number was, it was like the first time, it would be the first time in, 40 or 50 years that they've had back-to-back 9 or 10 win seasons. In Indiana, it would be the first time since the late 80s that they've had back-to-back 8-win seasons. And like, that gets them in the top 15, but actually showing what these teams did last year and what they bring back in the SEC gets them pushed back towards the 20s. It just doesn't really make any sense. And that is shown by this next stat brought up by Brett McMurphy, which is phenomenal here. I know it might be a little tough to read for those of you following along on YouTube, so I will just read it out from my phone as you guys try to decipher it a little bit. Brett McMurphy says this: at least one team that started the season unranked finished in the top 10 of the final AP poll in 29 of the last 31 years. So we're not talking about a team that's not ranked just making it into the top 25 at the end of the season. We're talking about top 10. That means in today's day and age, legit contender. 29 of the last 31 years. And he says which unranked team finishes in the top 10 this season. Why not Baylor? Why not us? because there's actually a pretty clear roadmap for how Baylor does that. First off, those who don't like having the rankings for Baylor in the preseason, like having that chip on their shoulder, I get you, because in 2021, they were not ranked to start the season. And where did they finish? Number 4 in America as the Big 12 champs, as the Sugar Bowl champs. Shame the college football playoff didn't expand by then. That would have been fascinating because Baylor beat 5 ranked teams that year. They could have made a legit run in a 16-team college football playoff and a 12-team college football playoff if that was around in 2021. And it probably would have been a similar first-round matchup as it was to the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss. Would have been fascinating. Well, actually, they would have been a top 4 seed because they won the Big 12 under this current model, as it were. So they would have had a first-round bye. But you look at Baylor's schedule this year. Again, we've talked so much about the first 2 weeks. Auburn, week 1. At number 16, SMU in week 2. A couple weeks later, home to number 11, Arizona State. That's 2 college football playoff teams from last year in the first month of the season. And oh yeah, throw in an SEC opponent. You've got Utah at home later in the season. Some of those Big 12 teams that are kind of on the fringe that we think are going to appear in the rankings at some point. They've got TCU on the schedule. They've got Kansas State in early October at home. All of your big ranked matchups, other than SMU, which let's call it a toss-up as a neutral site with their attendance problems, become home games. Baylor in 2021 was able to get into the top 5 at the end of the season after being unranked at the beginning of the season by beating 5 ranked teams. They came thick and fast, man. You got Iowa State as a top 10 team early on in the season. I think that was the first conference game. Then they lost to Oklahoma State, and the next one obviously got them back in Arlington. So all of this matches up with what we saw in 2021, which, again, might be the greatest season in Baylor football history. Certainly the most wins. It's the only one where they doubled up on a Big 12 championship, or a conference championship, I should say, and a New Year's Six bowl, or a BCS bowl, if you want to go back that far. If you want to argue 13 or 14 is a better team, I can certainly hear that argument. Those teams were loaded. But in terms of accomplishments, 2021 is the biggest one, the biggest accomplishment. And it's eerily familiar to the schedule that we look at right now as a team that went 10-2 and then obviously finished at 12-2. All I'm saying is it's real similar. The only thing that's different is there is some internal hype here. I think a lot of us did feel fairly good about 2021, even coming off a 2-7 season. That defense was dominant the first year. Obviously, quarterback was a big question mark, but you brought a lot of your skill guys back, and you had a really, really good defense, which obviously continued on through 2021. This year, I think we're just more excited about this offense and thinking that they're going to prove a lot of people wrong. 2021, we're looking for a good season. We're looking for a bowl game, maybe a little bit more. This year, the expectations are sky high. Why not us? Why not Baylor to take that mantle and make it 30 out of 32 years that a team was unranked in the preseason AP poll top 25 and finished top 10 in the nation at season's end? I think Baylor is just as good a shot as anybody who didn't make this top 25, if not better than anybody who didn't make this top 25. It's all ahead of you, gentlemen. Big games, a lot of them, and they're at home for the most part. It starts with Auburn in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. Fantastic stuff. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Is this right ahead of Baylor? Can they be the team to keep this trend going? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, we're the only ones bringing you nothing but Baylor content for free 5 days a week. It's not affiliated with the university, of course, here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Coming up next, Dave Aranda talked about some new leaders on this team, some ones that are going to surprise you, and at some positions that really should make you happy. We'll tell you who those new leaders are, maybe a preview at some single-digit numbers. Coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by Wayfair. every style, every home. As summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into a routine you love, and Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop for refreshing your home. And as someone who just moved into a new home, let me tell you, they're not lying, okay? I recently grabbed some big-time items of need right as we got here. We had a party the first weekend. We needed some extra chairs that weren't just going to be for one day, but were going to fit our new, more spacious apartment. And Wayfair came through for us with a comforter, with some chairs, with some knickknacks for the missus. Fantastic stuff at Wayfair. So get organized, refreshed, and back to routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home and just outside your home, because we're using a lot of that stuff on the patio, which we didn't have at the last place. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Let's run it back here on Locked On Baylor. It's here from Dave Aranda in just a second. He was talking after the scrimmage over the weekend about who these new leaders might be. I always find this a very fascinating list to study every year. Because if there's too many veteran guys, you're like, oh, why aren't the new guys making an impact? If it's too many new guys, you say, boy, why do they have louder rooms than the experienced guys? And when you have a team that does have some hype from us, mostly, as you can tell from the rankings, right? From us, the hype to do something special is there. When you have that, you need to have the right guys in the room. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and say this team has not faced adversity. This core has not faced adversity head on and come out better on the other side. Talked about it with Sydney on Wednesday. This team 4 last year. They didn't know if their coach was going to be their coach by the end of the plane ride home. And they had been bad the year before at 3-9. They had been super disappointing at the end of 2022, losing 4 games in a row after starting 6-3 and losing to a service academy in a bowl game. Things were very, very, very bleak 10 months ago in Baylor Nation. And these kids, they didn't need to fire the coach. They didn't need to wait for the next year to bring in transfer portal guys. They picked themselves up by their own bootstraps and made that happen, made that 6-game win streak happen. And so that's why I'm really interested to see who some of the leaders are going to be for this team, who some of the captains are going to be, who are going to be wearing the single-digit numbers this year. Dave Aranda gave his answer. One of those is not going to surprise you at all, but the rest of them, good kind of surprise.
Yeah. Sawyers always has a gift of bringing guys together, and he's doing that today still. But he's also able to call guys out. And I think the calling out part is important. I think sometimes when you're around a bunch of nice guys, the nice guys can be taken advantage of. And so to have the ability to kind of be yourself and have your heart wide open like how God made you, but to be able to call out the BS, I think that is a really strong leader. And we've got some guys that are fitting that role.
KT is that guy on?
KT on defense, Devin Bobby on defense, Emar'rion Winston on defense, and Jackie Marshall.
Dave,
So I don't mean this as any disrespect to some players who have played before for Dave Aranda, but you remember after 2022 and certainly in 2023, we had talked about person over player. Remember that? That's been wiped from Baylor football history, person over player. It's not a bad motto to have. It's not a bad compass to live by, so to speak. But it was hurting Baylor on the football field. And we heard it from some sources that, they just weren't able to, the standard was almost too high. Kids who got suspended one time in high school and the coaching staff being like, that's not good enough. We can't have that. And so I don't know that Dave had the leaders he was just describing in there, right? Leaders saying, cutting through the BS, as he puts it, and not just following along, not just saying everything's okay, being able to be friendly and loving and be your brother out there on the battlefield, but also be able to call you out. I don't know that he had that in some of those lean years. 2021 guys, certainly. There was a lot of Matt Rule guys still on this team who were absolutely the leaders. And now it sounds like he's got some more of that. And how about some of the names? Keaton Thomas, transfer from a year ago, arguably my favorite player on this team. I mean, what a breath of fresh air he brought to this Baylor defense last year. Now he's going to be leading that defense, which we know is going to take a huge step. Devin Bobby, another one. You know, Devin Bobby is one of the most interesting players on this team. If you think about some of the defensive backs on last year's team, you can think back to a play where they got burned, right? And I'm not going to go through all the names, but you know it. Corners and safeties, you can say, yeah, I remember this bad play or this or this. Devin Bobby, can you think of one? Undersized dude from DeSoto who knocks the crud out of people? Like genuinely one of the hardest hitters on the team? I talked to one of his defensive coordinators in high school at DeSoto. Guy said, man, we couldn't believe Devin Bobby when he first came in. He's the shortest guy in the defense, laying dudes out. He's doing that still at the Power 4 level in Division I at Baylor. Can't find a bad play from Devin Bobby. He's going to be a crucial part of this defense. So is Emar'rion Winston. How about that name being dropped in there? A transfer from Oregon who comes in here and is being a leader right away. That gets me fired up. You look at someone like Emar'rion Winston, who played 30 games at Oregon, okay, the lion's share of which last year, they were the number one team in the country. And he comes to Baylor. And I think we have sort of this fear of guys who come from big schools who didn't play a ton. You know, it's not like Emar'rion Winston was out there every snap, but he played a lot of games for Oregon. And you're just thinking, is this a disciplinary problem, Steve Linton? Is it going to be something like that, where they're just coming in here because they need a chance rather than they're coming here to advance their career, to win, to become a better football player and be part of a better team and be a bigger part of a good team? Emar'rion Winston seems to fit. He's played for good teams. He didn't get the shine there. Hopefully Calvin Simpson-Hunt's the same way. Won a national championship. Didn't play a ton of snaps on defense. And now they're coming here because they're like, look, we can make a difference here. I can make a difference here. And Emar'rion Winston does it at a super important position. As we talked about on Wednesday, we talked about it a little bit in the crossover yesterday. Like, they need some guys who can be fast on this defense, who can get after the quarterback, which Emar'rion Winston should be able to do as an outside linebacker. And they need guys who can put some pressure on the passer. Emar'rion Winston comes in part to do that. And the best part about it, you know, Emar'rion Winston wasn't like Lacey Strunk from Temple and goes to Oregon and then comes back to be back home. Emar'rion Winston's from Portland, Oregon, not Maine, which is the superior Portland. He's coming from Oregon and playing at Oregon and now goes down to Baylor, to Texas, where maybe he's never been before, and he's a leader day one. That's like really good news. I hope I'm not overblowing this thing, but this is really good news for who these Baylor leaders are going to be. And I know some of you have already started with your single-digit jersey number predictions. If you have some, let me know in the comments below. I love this tradition that Matt Rule brought in and that Dave Aranda has kept around, more or less. Let me know who you think is going to get the single-digit numbers. Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, tweet at us at Locked On Baylor. Helps me keep my job when you like and subscribe. Guys, we are so close to 4,000 subscribers. So close. Need your help there. We're under 100 away. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and we can get there before they kick off against Auburn week 1. Coming up next, the BU versus BU debate. This is a weird one, and my take might be deemed a little controversial. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th, which is coming up, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bold predictions and preseason hunches. How about adding another holiday to your schedule, huh? That's not bad. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, This is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race, Dak Prescott. Crown your champion in August. How about them Cowboys? Or parlay your division winner dark horses. Could be the Cowboys too. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only on August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Okay, alas, it is time to get a bit controversial here on Locked On Baylor. One of the big stories this week is that our beloved university is going to court. They are suing Boston University over the ripoff of the Baylor logo that Boston University is trying to put out. I might get a little controversial here, okay? Those of you who know me well enough know that I am in the crosshairs of this. I am a native of the Boston suburbs. I grew up with a favorite college hockey team, that being the Boston University Terriers, which I have right here. But I went to Baylor. I'm a Baylor guy. I host Locked On Baylor. I talk about Baylor every day. Baylor is my school. Baylor is my alma mater. And Baylor is going to win this case, by the way. Because this that Boston University's put out here, total ripoff. I mean, look at that, man. In fact, let's bring in the full picture of the side-by-side for those of you watching on YouTube. I mean, come on. In fact, I saw this at the Boston University bookstore a few weeks ago and thought, that's literally just a Baylor logo, just in red, scarlet. This is ridiculous. And those of us who know our history or have read this week know that this has already been decided in court, which we'll get to in a second. But the debate has sort of come out of this of who the BU is. Because I know one of Boston University's arguments is, well, we are known as BU, not Baylor. And that has ticked a lot of Baylor people off, right? Baylor is a bigger brand in college athletics than Boston University. Like, let's not make any bones about it. But BU is Boston University. I know that sucks for a lot of Baylor fans to hear, but you go around, not just Boston, because I've been a lot of different places in this world. You go around anywhere, BU, it's Boston University. It's not Baylor. It's not Bradley. It's not Bradford. It's not Binghamton. It's not Brown. It's Boston University. That said, that does not mean they have this leg to stand on. That does not win them this case. Like, not by a long shot. Baylor is known as Baylor. Like, let's be honest, guys. Unless you're trying to shorten up a text, how many times are you referring to you to your friend that also went to Baylor and calling it BU? I don't do that. My friends don't do that. I did a radio show with Matt Mosley, both Baylor guys who almost exclusively talk about Baylor. We don't call it BU. Boston University is, for the same reason why we call the University of Texas UT instead of Texas. Texas is a state. Boston is a city. If you just say Boston, nobody's going to know that you're talking about the BU Terriers. Baylor is what we call Baylor. That said, that does not mean that BU is going to win this case. They've completely ripped off the Baylor logo. And this was already a thing back in the 80s. And they came to a settlement where Baylor cannot put B and U next to each other on the same plane. Boston University cannot do an interlocking BU. We shake hands, we move on. Except for the fact that starting in 2018, it says, when this exact design with a different color was still Baylor's exact logo, they just ripped it off and they just started doing it for themselves. And I know there are a lot of trolls in the comment section of like, oh, BU's looks better and this and that. And I've seen a bunch from around here, now living in the Boston area again, of, oh, well, BU was here first, so they get it. Like, you guys don't know how logos work. It's a trademark. Baylor has it. BU has violated it. That we're done. Like, Baylor's going to win this case easily. Go, if you want a Baylor logo in scarlet and black, go and buy it now. It's going away very soon. Okay? Going away quite soon. And Baylor definitely, like as much as BU wants to say, oh, we're BU, we get this logo. Everyone knows us as BU. Like they do not have the clout as an athletic department to come down on even a school like Baylor. That's small for Division I, right? Small for the Power Four. Baylor wins that in a landslide. Now, BU does have one great sport that none of you watch. Okay. They have won 5 national championships in men's ice hockey and have put over 100 guys in the NHL. All the great names that you remember from the Miracle on Ice team, for those of you old enough to remember it in 1980, they were BU Terriers. But they do not have the footprint in the college athletics world that Baylor has. So even though I've got a little bit on both sides here, like I can admit to you guys that BU is Boston University, but that Baylor is the brand. Baylor is that logo, and Baylor is going to win that case. So if BU wants to be the BU, congrats. Baylor will continue to have this logo. You're going to have to get rid of all that merchandise. And Baylor is going to be the one that's winning in sports that the whole country cares about. Football, men's basketball, national champions, pro football Hall of Famers, that kind of thing. 50,000 seat football stadium. Not just the old Boston Braves field. Yeah. So that's been eating away at me because I know a lot of Baylor fans aren't going to like to hear even that I admit that Boston University is BU. It is, but it doesn't mean they have the brand power that Baylor does. It doesn't mean they have a better athletic department than Baylor does. And it sure as heck does not mean that they're going to win this lawsuit because they're not. Baylor's going to trounce them in this. It's pretty clearly an exact ripoff of Baylor's logo, just putting a different color on it. You can't do that. And you can't use that excuse. Like when you were talking about Major League Baseball anywhere in America and you say the Sox, people are going to think of the Red Sox. That doesn't mean the White Sox can't use that name, that colloquial term. It just means they can't use the logo. Okay? BU, just because you can be BU, doesn't mean that you can just rip off somebody else's logo. And that's what's going to happen. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Who the real BU is. Come at me. Do it. And who's going to win this case. But I think what is important here is the fact that we need to get to our trivia question to end the week. Okay? It's going to be a nice little two-parter. First two-part trivia question on Locked On Baylor. In Locked On Baylor's history. Let's keep it Massachusetts themed, shall we? The only time in the last 100 years that Baylor has played a college football game in Massachusetts was in 1999 on September the 4th. They lost in overtime to the Boston College Eagles, 30-29, after Baylor missed an extra point. Boston College scored a touchdown and did not miss the extra point. Just classic late 90s Baylor kind of stuff. So my two-part question to you is, who was the head coach making his Baylor debut in that game, which is so fitting for the way that they lost? Who was the coach who was making his debut? It would get even worse the next week or 2 weeks later. And who was the quarterback for Boston College? And I should phrase it as this. What NFL star's brother, who's now an ESPN analyst, was the quarterback at Boston College? Of course, get these comments in below. Get the answers in the comments. Tweet at us at Locked On Baylor if you're listening on wherever you get your podcast. And the first one that gets it, either one, I'll even leave up 2 winners if we need to. If you can do one but not the other, we'll get a shout out on the next video. So thank you once again for making it your first listen today and every day. Get involved in that comment section. Let me know what you think about the Chrome Domes coming back and get the trivia questions in there, answers in there. There we go. And we will see you on Monday on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.